I can remember the kind of end of my senior year as I started to kind of embrace the idea of getting out of high school and joining the adult world, the real world, and doing all the fun adulting things that most of us teenage selves at that time are quite frightened, honestly, to have to embark upon and do. And I was fortunate enough that I had my parents who allowed me to stay at their place for a decent amount of time after graduating high school. I feel like that is a lot more common these days than it was back in their time. And I think, like, generationally, as things change, I think that our parents kind of learned from their experience of having almost been immediately kicked out after having graduated high school, or expected to immediately move out, that wasn't possibly the best way to handle things. And so they learned and built a better foundation from there. I feel like my parents especially definitely had a good building foundation from their experiences to build better experiences for their kids. But I think a lot of Gen X parents feel or share that same sentiment. I think that now we're starting to tip the scales in the opposite way, where a lot of parents are potentially maybe letting their kids get too comfortable at home, but that's a subject for an entirely different video. It was the summer of my senior year of high school, and I can remember everybody's getting antsy and ready for graduation. We're all ready to move on to that next chapter. All we've been thinking about the entire time we're in school is getting out of school. And now sometimes we're out of school and all we want to do is go back, but I, for one, don't like going back all that much. But at any rate, I sat down. It was just some random Sunday breakfast. My dad used to make up a big old spread for us every Sunday morning: pancakes, eggs, bacon, sausage, hash browns, you name it. And so we were having breakfast, and I was like, I've always wanted to live a life where finances is not constantly looming over my head. And I mean, I'm sure everybody's like, oh yeah, who wouldn't? But that was like my 18-year-old teenage self. Like, I was determined. I was like, what can I do at this stage in life to start me out and to get me somewhere where I am building a better foundation and building even more of a foundation off of the foundation that my parents had built for me. And so the idea was, what I asked them was, what are the two biggest, most cumbersome payments that the average adult has to pay or whatever on a regular basis? And their answer was mortgage and car payment. I was like, okay. And so I was like, in theory, if I find a way to eliminate or greatly reduce my mortgage and or car payment, then I should be miles ahead of the average adult in my situation, or even in their situation for that matter. And so graduating from high school, that was the goal. I actually went for the car first, but that's another story for another video. We're talking specifically about the house and that journey. But went for the car first. You'll have to watch the video on that one to figure out how that landed for me. But once I got that all squared away, it was time for the house to be the next goal. And so I did my goals based on significant birthdays. So I wanted the car by my 21st. I wanted the house by my 25th. So I was 21. I had done what I did with my car, and I was ready to start the journey for the house, which was going to be the next challenge for me. And so I have to kind of go back in time and put myself in that state of mind. Where was I? It would have been 2016, so I would not have started at the hospital yet, which is my current job that I have. And I would have still been working at Home Depot at the time. 2016, I don't think I was even working two jobs at that time. I think I was just working the one. I wound up getting a gig at Home Depot, part of their merchandising team, and the merchandising team works from 5 a.m. to 1:30 Monday through Friday. And so in my mind at the time, I had perfect hours, no weekends, no holidays. I had a decent shift and a decently steady job, and I was set. I had my car situated, everything was set, ready to go, and I was just going to start shoving money into a savings account, and eventually I would just drop a whole lump sum of change onto a house, and that would get my mortgage down to a more sustainable level. And so that was the idea, and I rocked that for a couple of months. Realistically, what happened was I was working from 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. So I'd get off work at 1:30 p.m. I would go home, get home around 2 p.m., and then I would play video games from 2 p.m. till about 10 o'clock at night, at which time I would go to bed, wake up in the morning, go to work, rinse and repeat. And I can remember at some point in time, it just clicked. And there was kind of a multitude of things. So this was like late 2016 going into 17. We're talking like Xbox One era gaming. And at least for me, I feel like the last like great era of gaming was the 360 era. And so by 2016, 17, the Xbox One era was in full swing, and I apologize to anybody who doesn't play Xbox, but that's how I measure my eras of gaming because I'm an Xbox player. So at any rate, Xbox One gaming was in full swing, and I was spending an unimaginable amount of time every day after work doing nothing but playing games. And it was just, one day and I didn't even wake up, like I was just had this epiphany, the moment where I was like, okay, I can't do this forever. This is not a significant way to live a life. Like I can't just get home and game for 8 hours, go to bed, wake up, go to work. And I was like, that's not going to cut it. And like on top of all that, the games had stopped being fun. I think it's a combination of the fact that I was playing them so much, but like the games were really starting to get cookie cutter at that time. I still like feel like we're in that problem still to this day, but I was really just kind of not feeling the gaming market anymore. And so my decision that I made at the time, I was like, you know what? I am going to go ahead and get a second job. Like, my thought process at the time is if I gave myself less time to game, then I would enjoy and appreciate what time I had when I gave myself time. So I landed a job here at the local bank, and I worked from 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I worked at the bank from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and rotating Saturdays. And so that realistically meant if I kept my bedtime of 10 p.m., then I had still from 6 to 10 to play games, and that's still a 4-hour commitment, but I'm now making more money because I'm working two jobs, and I'm giving myself less wasted time. I don't like labeling gaming as wasted time. A good adage for most of anything is too much of anything is no good for you.
Too much of anything is no good for you, but I don't know about that.
And I think that that is applicable with gaming. I use it as an escape and as a way to socialize with my friends. A lot of my friends aren't local around the area anymore, so I can't really just go hang out with them very easily. And so I use gaming as that sort of avenue. And so with reducing my time, I am not saying that gaming was just an entire big old waste of time, but gaming for, what was that, from 2 to 10 to like 8 hours a day, that's excessive. And so I rode that train for a good while, and it was fine enough. I kept stocking away money for the house. Got to circle back because we are talking about my house situation, but we're getting there, I promise. It's just, there's a whole story here to tell. So at any rate, the bank thing's going, and I don't much love the bank. Like it's boring, and maybe it was because it was a small town bank, but I think just banking in general is not the career path for me. And my mom has worked at like the big hospital up in the area for quite some time, and so I've been thinking pretty hard about getting on there. And so finally, It's the summer of, and probably like more like the fall, like the end of summer, beginning of fall time of 2017. And I go out to California to do a big meetup with a bunch of my Xbox friends, which that is yet another story for yet another day that you all will just have to stay tuned to hear the entire thing that I have to tell about that. But that was a big kind of eye-opening moment, and like just I can remember sitting on the beach in California and just chilling and being like, you know what, like I can do something better with my life. Like it does not need to just be working at Home Depot, working at a bank. And so I got back, I applied for a multitude of positions at the hospital. About a month later, I hear back from one of the applications, and boom, bada bing, bada bang, I'm hired in to this new position. I start the hospital October of 17. I then dump the bank job and move to part time with Home Depot. And so at that point in time, I was working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the hospital, 410s, and then I was working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Home Depot, 3/8. And so essentially I was working every day of the week. And I can remember because I have made a point to myself to never work a day on my birthday. Ever since I joined the official working world, I dedicated my birthday to that. And I said, I'm never going to work a day on my birthday. And I've stayed true to that in the darn near 30 years that I've been here. So, at any rate, I can remember the birthday of that year. I took 2 days off, and it was a whole big deal. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have time off." And I was like, "I cannot believe that I'm losing my mind over having 2 days off when most people have that as just like a regular occurrence for them. Everybody has a 2 day weekend, and here I was like, this is a vacation for me. Like that's wild." So I ran that plan from 17 through from October of 17 through the end of 18. December of 18, I got a job working evenings at the hospital Monday through Friday, and then I just switched my hours at Home Depot. So I was working from I think 8 to 2 at Home Depot, and then 2 to 10:30 at the hospital. Not exactly like that, because obviously I had to give myself enough time to get off, get to the other job, and go. But essentially, that's what I was doing. I was working from 8 to 10:30 Monday through Friday at that point. Which honestly, getting my weekends back made the world of difference. My week was completely shot. I couldn't do anything during it, but getting my weekends back made the world of difference. And so we finally reached the kind of long stretch here. I keep going off on the tangents and explaining this whole life situation to me once again. It's a whole story to be told, and we are getting around to the house, I promise. So I did the whole evenings at the hospitals, day shift at Home Depot, ran that marathon for an entire 3 years, I think. A lot of people, when I came back to Home Depot, because I took a leave of absence from Home Depot, and then I came back when I was settled in with my job at the hospital, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're not gonna make it 6 months." And then 3 years later, I'm like, "Here I am, still doing it." It's now, so I did that for 3 years, but I need to backtrack because I'm getting ahead of myself. 2019 is when I started making serious moves on building, or not building a house at the time. It was just buying one, just putting down a significant chunk of change on a house. And so I had pretty much been, since 2017 up to 2019, was that 3 years, I had been just stocking away money, saving money from the 2 jobs that I was working. I was still living with my folks, so I had very low living, little to no living expenses, and so I was just shoving money into my savings. I was like, I am going to do something significant. And so 2019 is kind of when it all started to come together. I was house hunting, looking for something, but I didn't really have like a significant chunk of change, not enough to really make the impact on my mortgage that I wanted to. And a bit of this, or a lot of this, is a good stroke of luck. And I know that a lot of people are going to watch this and be like, man, you just got lucky. And yes, luck plays into it. But even if I had gotten lucky, if I hadn't have put the hard work in from 2017 to 2019 to be ready for when the opportunity struck, I wouldn't have been able to capitalize on it. So at any rate, my brother happens to be wanting to start his own construction business around this time as well. He's had it with his day job, and he wants to go and start his own business and see what that has to offer. And so he's like, hey, instead of dumping all this money into a down payment on a house that you may or may not actually want or like, why don't you just build something from the ground up? And we can pretty much do the labor ourselves, which will obviously save a lot of the money if you're doing the labor yourself. And then from there, we can, obviously, we still have to pay out for materials and all that. And you should come out at the end of the day significantly further along in this process than you were. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so we secured a plot in 2019. I found a little plot in town in the place where I live, which was perfect. And I bought that sucker outright with the money I'd been shoving along into my savings. And then we started grading the land, getting it ready for building, kind of October-ish of that year. And then, mind you, this is all like COVID is just now starting to be on the horizon. We're talking the end of 19 going into 20. And so then, of course, 2020 hits, and there's a huge uptick in the prices of everything, and the prices of everything still have not gone down from that, and I think they're still kind of rocketing up. But I can remember a lot of people being like, oh, you should wait, hold the line, because you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for materials that you weren't anticipating to pay for. And like material costs of building this house went up like 3 times its regular price while I was building. But before the end of like the big spike, like material costs was up like 5 times. And it still has not climbed down to where it was, and I know it's not going to. But I pushed through, and I was like, no, I was like, I think it's, despite it all, I think it's still the right time to do this. I think it still makes sense. And so we pushed through. We built out the house. My budget I wanted for the house was, I wanted to be done with it for like 50,000, and we wound up being at 66 when it was all said and done. And I can remember at the time really kicking myself because I didn't make my number goal, and that I really was like mad at myself for not having done what I set out to do. But luckily, a lot of my coworkers and friends at Home Depot kind of set me on the straight and narrow path, and they're like, dude, like, you need to understand that the overall material cost went up 3 times. So the fact that your material budget did not triple, it means you did exceedingly well. Because anytime someone sets out to do an adventure like this, build anything, it always costs more than you anticipate. And so at the end of the day, it was almost like I had gotten in for just a regular price, as if all this crazy stuff hadn't have happened. Somewhere around in 2020, when the house was mostly complete, my brother went off to go do other jobs with his business, and I took over finishing the house myself. And it looks very much so like a do-it-yourself kind of house, but I'm super proud of it, and like I did all the work. I'm gonna live in this house probably for ever. I don't foresee myself leaving, especially with the kind of financial stability that it has given me. Because the fact of the matter is, I got in it, as I already shared with you, for significantly less than what most people are able to get into a house. And my mortgage, because of COVID and the interest rates being so low, my mortgage is like $400. And so I'm fortunate to be in the position that I am in. And I tell this story to hopefully inspire others to be able to replicate the process the best they can. Obviously, no two situations are exactly the same, so no one's going to be able to take my situation verbatim and replicate it. You would have to have supportive parents who were able to house you for years without you spending an exceeding amount of money. You need the self-discipline that I had to be able to save 60% of your paycheck, if not more, every paycheck. And you would have to have a brother who is in construction and can help you build your own house from the ground up. And then the dedication to stick to that in the middle of a pandemic. Those are things that are largely unrepeatable, but like the determination and the fact that it is an achievable goal, I hope is enough to inspire people to be like, wow, like he was able to set his mind to something and be like, I'm going to find a way to beat the system. I'm going to find a way to have a house and to not be burdened by a mortgage payment that is completely unpayable. I, at this point, could get a job making minimum wage and never not be able to make my mortgage payment. And that's a huge thing to be able to say. And so, again, I share these stories with you because I want you all to know that these results are possible and that they can be done. You need to find your own pathway to it, but you also should not allow yourself to get dragged down in the impossibility of things. Like, you have to think creatively and you have to outthink the system. And if I was able to do it, then I know that you are more than capable as well. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to my story. I hoped it was interesting. Hopefully I'm telling good stories that can inspire a generation of people to beat the system and get out from below the wage slavery that they would have us expect is normal. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.